The Galactic Assembly had existed for 12,000 years. It was a great council where 100 different alien species came together to talk about trade, borders, and peace. The assembly met in a massive station that floated between stars, and at the center of this station sat the elders. The elders were called They were ancient beings made of living crystal, and they had watched civilizations rise and fall for longer than anyone could remember. They had seen everything. They had witnessed wars that burned entire star systems. They had watched proud empires turn to dust, and they had learned one truth above all others. On the floor of the assembly chamber, carved into black stone, was a single warning. It had been there for 8,000 years. The words said, "Let humanity walk alone. Do not provoke them. Do not test them. Do not wake what sleeps." The younger species laughed at this warning. They thought it was a joke or an old superstition. Humans were small and weak. They lived on a single blue planet in a quiet corner of the galaxy. They barely lived 100 years. They spent most of their time fighting each other over silly things. How could such creatures be dangerous? The sovereignty was one of the proudest races in the galaxy. They were tall reptilian warriors with scales like armor and teeth like knives. They had conquered 30 star systems and believed themselves to be the greatest military power in existence. When they looked at the warning about humans, they laughed the loudest. Lord Thane was a commander who had won 100 battles. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crushing Fist, and looked at his fleet. 47 warships, each one capable of destroying a planet. He had brought this armada to the edge of human space for one simple reason. He wanted to prove that the elders were fools. "The humans have a mining colony on the 4th planet of this system," his tactical officer reported. "They call it New. Population, 17,000. Thane's jaws stretched into what passed for a smile among his kind. "Perfect. We will destroy it. When the galaxy sees how easily humans die, everyone will know that the old warnings mean nothing." Far below, on the surface of New, people went about their ordinary lives. Miners worked in deep tunnels, pulling precious metals from the rock. Children went to school. Families ate dinner together. They had no idea that death was falling from the sky. Admiral stood on the bridge of a small patrol ship assigned to protect this sector. She was 45 years old with short black hair and calm eyes that had seen too much. Beside her, Lieutenant monitored the sensor screens with growing worry. "Admiral," he said, his voice tight but controlled, "I am detecting a large fleet entering the system, 47 capital ships. They are not responding to our hails." Walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. She could see them now, distant lights that did not belong. Configuration. Sovereignty, full war formation. She closed her eyes for just a moment. 17,000 civilians below, 1 patrol ship above. The math was simple and terrible. "Open a channel to Earth," she ordered. "Priority Alpha." The communication beam shot across the vast emptiness of space at speeds that should have been impossible. It reached Earth in moments, not the hours that normal signals required. This was humanity's first secret, hidden from the galaxy. They had learned to whisper across the stars faster than light itself. On the face of a tired general appeared. "Admiral, report." "Sir, the Sovereignty has entered our space with a full battle fleet. They are moving toward New. I am requesting immediate authorization for Protocol Typhoon." The general's face went pale. Protocol Typhoon was not a defense plan. It was something else entirely. Something that humanity had hoped never to use. "Authorization granted," he said quietly. "May God forgive us all." The channel closed, turned to her crew. They were young, most of them. They had joined the fleet hopping for adventure and discovery. Now they faced something far worse. "You heard the authorization," she said. "Begin evacuation broadcasts to New, tell them to get to the shelters, and power up the main drives. We are going to buy them time." Lieutenant stared at her. "Admiral, we cannot fight 47 ships. We will be destroyed in minutes." "Then we will use those minutes well." His voice was steady as stone. "Every second we survive is another second for civilians to reach safety. That is our job. That is why we are here." The surged forward, its engines burning bright against the darkness. It was a small ship facing an armada. It was a candle challenging a storm, but it did not hesitate. On his flagship, Lord Thane watched the tiny human vessel approach. He felt something he had not felt in decades: confusion. This made no sense. One ship against 47. It was suicide. "They are hailing us," his communications officer reported. "Let me hear it." Admiral's voice filled the bridge. It was calm, almost gentle, like a mother explaining something simple to a child. "Fleet, this is Admiral of the Terran Defense Corps. You are entering protected space. You have not been invited. You have not been welcomed. You are approaching a civilian population with weapons charged and shields raised. I am asking you one time to turn around and leave." Thane laughed. The sound was harsh and cruel. "One ship asks 47 to retreat. Human, you are either brave or stupid, perhaps both." "I am neither," replied. "I am simply giving you a chance. The elders warned your people about us. I am asking you to remember that warning. Turn back now and this ends peacefully. Continue forward and you will learn why that warning exists." Thane cut the channel. He was still laughing as he gave the order. "Destroy her, then burn the colony." The fleet opened fire. Thousands of plasma bolts and kinetic rounds screamed through space toward the tiny human ship. The twisted and rolled, dodging some, absorbing others against shields that flared and sparked. "Forward shields at 40%, reported. "We cannot take much more." Nodded. She had known this would happen, but as she watched the chronometer count down, she smiled. Because far away, across the impossible distances of space, something was stirring. Humanity had received her message, and humanity was coming. "Open a final channel," she ordered. "Broadcast on all frequencies." When she spoke again, her words went out to every ship in the fleet. They went out to New Below. They went out to the darkness between stars, where human warships were already folding space and time to answer her call. "You were warned," she said simply. "Now you will understand why. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake. They had looked at humanity and seen weakness. They had seen a young species that fought among itself, that lived short lives, that built simple ships. They thought humans were prey. They were wrong." Captain stood on the bridge of the Silent Thunder, watching the stars twist and bend around her ship. She was 38 years old, with sharp eyes and a mind that worked faster than any computer. Around her, 11 other vessels moved through folded space, crossing distances that should have taken weeks in mere hours. This was humanity's second secret: fold space travel. While other species crawled between stars using slow engines and long journeys, humans had learned to bend the universe itself. They had kept this technology hidden for decades, waiting, hoping they would never need to use it. Now they needed it. "Emerging from fold space in 30 seconds, her navigator reported. "The fleet is still engaged with the Admiral's ship is badly damaged but still fighting." Felt pride swell in her chest. One ship against 47 and had held them for almost an hour. That was humanity. That was what the other species did not understand. Humans did not give up. Humans did not surrender. Humans fought until their last breath and then found a way to fight some more. "All ships," spoke into the fleet channel, "prepare for combat emergence. Remember your training. Remember who we are fighting for. 17,000 civilians are counting on us. Let us show these what happens when they threaten our people." Space tore open like a wound, and 12 human warships exploded into existence. They were not large ships, not by standards, but they moved with a speed and precision that should have been impossible. They did not fly in formation. They danced. On his flagship, Lord Thane stared at his sensors in disbelief. Where did they come from? How did they arrive so fast? No one could answer him. They did not have fold space technology. They did not even know it existed. In that moment, Thane felt something cold crawl down his spine. For the first time in his long life, he wondered if he had made a mistake. "Launch the," ordered calmly. Across the human fleet, bay doors opened. What came out were not fighters or bombers. They were small, sleek machines, barely larger than a ground vehicle. But inside each one was something the galaxy had never encountered, an artificial mind built on human neural patterns. They were not merely programmed. They thought, they learned, they adapted. They had been trained by playing millions of simulated battles, absorbing every strategy humanity had ever conceived. And they had one purpose: to hunt. The small machines scattered through the battle space like a swarm of angry hornets. They moved in patterns that no computer could predict because they were not following patterns at all. They were improvising. They were being creative. They were being human. Lord Thane watched his sensors fill with chaos. The tiny machines were everywhere at once, slipping through gaps in shield formations that existed for only a fraction of a second, striking at weak points that his engineers had thought invisible. Ships that had withstood 1,000 battles began to burn. "What are these things?" his tactical officer screamed. "They are not behaving like machines." On the silent thunder, Ensign tracked the battle with growing confidence. He was only 22, fresh from the academy, and this was his first real combat. His hands had shaken when the fight began. They were steady now. "Enemy formation is breaking," he reported. 19 vessels disabled or destroyed. The remainder are attempting to retreat. "They cannot be allowed to escape," said. Her voice was hard. "If they return to space, they will bring more ships, more soldiers, more death. This ends today." The human fleet moved to surround the surviving vessels, but did not order them destroyed. Instead, she opened a channel. "Fleet, this is Captain of the Terran Rapid Response Force. Your attack has failed. Your commander, Lord Thane, has been captured. His flagship is disabled and his crew are our prisoners. You have two choices. Surrender now and your lives will be spared. Continue fighting and you will be destroyed. Decide quickly." For a long moment the channel was silent. Then, one by one, the ships powered down their weapons. They did not understand what had happened. They had come to slaughter helpless civilians. They had found a storm instead. On Earth, President addressed the United Terran Council. She was 63 years old, a grandmother, a woman who had spent most of her life growing flowers and raising children. She had never wanted to lead during a war, but war had come anyway. "They wanted to test us," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "They believed the warnings about humanity were lies. They believed we were weak. They have learned the truth, but this is only the beginning." She looked around the chamber at the representatives from every human world. She saw fear in their eyes. Fear and anger and grief for the civilians who had died before the fleet arrived. "We did not start this war," continued. "We did not want this war. For centuries, we have tried to live in peace. We have hidden our true capabilities, hoping that we would never need to use them. But they have shown us that hope is not enough. The galaxy must understand what we are." She stood, and in that moment, she did not look like a grandmother. She looked like something ancient and terrible and unstoppable. "I am authorizing the deployment of the first expeditionary force, 20,000 ships, 4 million soldiers. We will go to Prime. We will end their ability to threaten us ever again. And we will show every species in this galaxy exactly what happens when you attack humanity's children." The council voted. It was unanimous. Across human space, shipyards that had been silent for decades roared back to life. Soldiers who had trained for battles they hoped would never come received their orders. And deep in the most secret facilities, weapons that humanity had prayed to never use were brought out of storage. On the prison ship carrying Lord Thane to Earth for trial, the commander sat in his cell and stared at the wall. He had been a warrior for 200 years. He had conquered worlds. He had destroyed fleets. He had never known fear. He knew it now. A human guard walked past his cell. She was young, barely more than a child by standards. Her name was, and she looked at him with eyes that held no hatred, no anger, only a kind of tired sadness. "Why?" Thane asked her. "Why did you let us live? You could have destroyed every ship. You chose not to. Why?" Stopped, she considered the question for a moment. "Because killing you would not bring back the people you murdered," she said finally. "Because mercy is strength, not weakness. And because if we became like you, we would not be worth saving." She walked away. Thane sat in silence, trying to understand. He had spent his whole life believing that power came from destruction. Humans believed something else, and somehow that something else had beaten him. He did not understand. But he was beginning to learn. The elder called Luminance had lived for 9,000 years. It was one of the oldest of a being of pure crystal that pulsed with inner light. In its long existence, it had watched 17 civilizations rise to greatness and crumble to nothing. It had seen wars that burned across entire galaxies. It had witnessed horrors that younger minds could not imagine. And long ago, when humanity was young, Luminance had watched them. Now it stood before the Galactic Assembly, its light flickering with urgency. The great chamber was filled with representatives from 100 species, all of them talking at once. The news from space had spread like wildfire. The mighty sovereignty had attacked a human colony. The humans had responded by crushing their fleet in hours. And now human warships were heading toward Prime. "Silence," Luminance commanded. Its voice resonated through the chamber, and every being fell quiet. Even the most powerful ambassadors knew better than to argue with an elder. "You do not understand what you have done," Luminance said. "There were fools to attack humanity. But if the rest of you believe you can simply watch from the shadows, you are greater fools still." Ambassador Vex of the Confederation stepped forward. His species were tall and proud, covered in shimmering scales, and they considered themselves second only to thee in military might. "With respect, Elder, the humans are impressive, but they are still one species. If they become a threat, a coalition of our combined forces would die." Luminance's light flared so bright that Vex stumbled backward. "You speak of numbers, you speak of ships and soldiers, you understand nothing. Let me tell you what humanity is." The elder moved to the center of the chamber, and as it did, holographic images appeared in the air around it. Images of Earth, images of human history. "I watched them," Luminance said. "For thousands of years I observed their little world. Do you know what I saw? I saw a species at war with itself. Century after century they fought. They burned their own cities. They killed their own children. They invented weapons capable of destroying their entire planet, and they came within moments of using them." The images showed mushroom clouds and burning cities, armies marching and soldiers dying. The alien ambassadors watched in silence. "Most species destroy themselves at this stage," Luminance continued. "The violence consumes them. They burn out like dying stars, but humanity did not. Do you know why?" No one answered. "Because they learned. Every war taught them something. Every defeat made them stronger. Every victory taught them humility. They developed something that no other species in this galaxy has ever achieved. They mastered the art of surviving themselves." Luminance's voice grew softer, almost gentle. "And they remember. Humans carry 10,000 years of conflict in their blood. Every wound, every betrayal, every lesson learned, they pass it down through generations. Their children read about ancient wars in school. Their soldiers study battles fought before their grandparents were born. They never forget." On the far side of the galaxy, the first expeditionary force entered orbit around Prime. 20,000 ships filled the sky, blocking out the stars. On the planet below, millions of looked up and knew that death had come for them. Sergeant Major stood in the cargo bay of a troop transport, checking his equipment one final time. He was 41 years old, a soldier since he was 18, and his grandfather had been a soldier before him. The old man had fought in Earth's last great war, a conflict that had ended before was born. But the stories had been passed down, and the lessons had been learned. "Remember," told his soldiers, "we are not here for revenge. We are not here to slaughter. We are here to end this war in a way that means there will never be another one." Private looked up at him. She was barely 20, with nervous eyes and hands that gripped her rifle too tight. "Sergeant, they killed 17,000 of our people. How can we not want revenge?" Understood. He had felt the same anger when he heard the news. But anger was a fire that burned without direction, and fires without direction destroyed everything, including the people who started them. "Because revenge is a cycle," he said. "We kill them, they hate us. Their children grow up wanting to kill us. Our children die. Then our want revenge. It never ends. We have to be better than that. We have to find a way to end the hate, not spread it." The transport shuddered as it entered the atmosphere. Through the viewports could see Prime below. A beautiful world, really, with green forests and blue oceans. Millions of people lived down there. Families, children, beings who had never asked for this war. "Sergeant Major," his radio crackled, "we are receiving reports of civilian shelters in the eastern district of the capital. Orders." "Did not hesitate. Secure them. I want medical teams forward, food and water supplies. No one touches the civilians, no one." The landing was rough but successful. Led his company through the burning ruins of the capital. The planetary defense forces had been crushed from orbit, but there were still pockets of resistance. Fighting was fierce in some areas. And then they reached the eastern district. The shelter was a massive underground bunker designed to protect civilians from orbital bombardment. When soldiers breached the doors, they found what they had expected, hundreds of huddled together in the darkness. But most of them were not soldiers. They were young. Children, by any species standards. "Sergeant," Private said, her voice uncertain, "what do we do?" Lowered his weapon. Around him, his soldiers did the same. The children stared at them with huge, terrified eyes. They had been told that humans were monsters. They had expected to be killed. "Get the medics," ordered. "Check for injuries, distribute food and water, and someone find a translator. I want these kids to know they are safe." In the hours that followed, scenes like this played out across Prime. Human soldiers secured hospitals and protected doctors. Human engineers restored power to shelters. Human medics treated wounded without asking whether they had been soldiers or civilians. Lord Thane, now a prisoner awaiting judgment, watched footage of this on a screen in his cell. He saw human soldiers playing with children. He saw a young human woman giving her own food to a hungry elder. He saw enemies treating each other like family. "I do not understand," he said to his guard, Corporal. "We attacked you. We killed your people. Why do you show us mercy?" Watched the same footage. Her own brother had died on Nu, killed in the first moments of the attack. She had every reason to hate every reason to want them to suffer. "Because we are human," she said quietly. "We know what war does. We have done terrible things to each other throughout our history. We have learned that hatred only creates more hatred. The only way to truly win a war is to make the enemy into a friend." Thane shook his head. "That is weakness. Your enemies will take advantage of you." "Some will try," agreed. "Some will fail. But eventually, over time, the ones who see our mercy will remember it. They will teach their children that humans can be trusted, and those children will grow up in a galaxy where peace is possible." She paused. "That is worth more than any victory." Back at the Galactic Assembly, Luminance finished its warning. The great chamber was silent, every ambassador lost in thought. "Humanity does not want war," the Elder said. "They have had enough war to last 10,000 lifetimes, but if you threaten them, if you back them into a corner, if you give them no choice, Its light pulsed once, bright as a dying star. They will become the very thing that terrifies them most, and they will not stop until the threat is ended. Forever. The silence stretched on. Somewhere in the shadows, plans were already being made. The war with the lasted 11 months. When it ended, the once proud sovereignty existed only as a memory. Their fleet was debris floating between stars. Their leaders were imprisoned or dead. Their military power, which had taken 2,000 years to build, had been swept away in less than a year. But humanity did not do what every other conqueror in galactic history had done. They did not annex worlds. They did not enslave people. They did not demand tribute or resources or obedience. Instead, President stood before the Galactic Assembly and made an announcement that stunned every species in the chamber. "The war is over," she said. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "They attacked us without reason. They murdered 17,000 of our people. We responded. We won. And now we offer them something they never expected: peace." The holographic display behind her showed images of human construction teams rebuilding cities, human doctors treating sick, human teachers opening schools for children. "We are providing reconstruction aid to Prime," continued. "We are building hospitals and schools and power plants. We are not doing this because we are weak. We are doing this because we understand something that warriors often forget. True victory is not destroying your enemy. True victory is transforming them into a friend." In the Galactic Assembly, silence reigned. The ambassadors looked at each other with confusion and fear. This was not how wars were supposed to end. This was not how conquerors behaved. What kind of species crushed an enemy so completely and then helped them rebuild? Ambassador Vex of the Confederation watched the human president with narrowed eyes. He had spent his life studying power, understanding how species rose and fell, and what he saw in humanity terrified him. "This is not mercy," he whispered to his advisor. "This is strategy. They are making the dependent on them, grateful to them. In a generation there will be allies, not subjects, and then humanity will be even stronger." His advisor nodded slowly. "What do we do?" "We make sure that day never comes." In the weeks that followed, Vex reached out to other species who shared his fear. They were powerful, but they could not face humanity alone. No single species could, but together, united, they might have a chance. Secret meetings were held in hidden places. Communications were sent through channels that even the best spies could not detect. 17 species eventually joined the conspiracy. 300,000 warships, billions of soldiers, more military power than had ever been assembled in galactic history. Their plan was simple: strike Earth before humanity could grow any stronger, destroy the human, and the rest would fall. Without their center, without their history, humans would scatter and fade. The threat would be ended forever. High Commander of the was chosen to lead the coalition fleet. He was old for his species, with scales that had turned from bright blue to dull gray, but his mind was still sharp. He had commanded armies for 100 years. He had never lost a war. "The elders will not approve," his advisor warned. "The elders are fossils," replied. "They hide behind warnings and predictions while the galaxy burns. They had their chance to lead. They failed. Now it is our turn." He looked out at the fleet gathering in the darkness between stars, dreadnoughts the size of mountains, carriers filled with fighters, support ships loaded with enough supplies for a war that might last years. "By this time next month," said, "humanity will be a memory. Their worlds will be ash. Their people will be scattered, and the galaxy will finally be safe." What did not know, what none of the conspirators knew, was that humanity had been listening from the beginning. Director sat in her office on Luna, Earth's moon, reviewing intelligence reports. She was 58 years old, a former codebreaker who had spent 30 years learning to read the secrets that others tried to hide. Her hair had gone gray, and her eyes were tired, but her mind remained the sharpest weapon in the human arsenal. They have been communicating through quantum-encrypted channels, her deputy reported. They believe the encryption is unbreakable. Almost smiled, almost. They believe many things, show me the data. The holographic display filled with information. Names, dates, fleet movements, battle plans. The coalition had been careful, but they had made one critical mistake. They had assumed that human technology was limited to what humanity had shown the galaxy. It was not. 17 species, murmured. 300,000 ships. Target, Earth. She leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. Timeline. 8 months, perhaps less if they accelerate their preparations. 8 months. Not enough time to build a defense fleet capable of matching those numbers. Not enough time for diplomacy. Not enough time for anything conventional. Opened her eyes. Get me President, secure channel, and activate the Prometheus initiative. Her deputy went pale. Director, that is a last resort if we use it. If we do not use it, humanity dies. His voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. I know what Prometheus is. I know what it will cost us, but I will not watch Earth burn while I still have options. Now get me the President. The channel opened. President's face appeared on the screen. She looked older than she had a year ago, worn down by the weight of leading humanity through its first interstellar war. But her eyes were still clear, still sharp. Director, I assume this is not good news. No, Madam President, it is not, transmitted the intelligence data. A coalition of 17 species is preparing to attack Earth. They have 300,000 ships. They will arrive in 8 months. Studied the data in silence. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet. I see, and your recommendation? Activate Prometheus. Begin preparations immediately. We may not need to use it, but we must have it ready. The President was silent for a long moment. Prometheus was humanity's darkest secret, a weapon so terrible that only 3 people in the entire government knew it existed. It had been built during the darkest days of human history, when nuclear war had seemed inevitable. It had been hidden away, never used, never even tested. It was designed to kill stars. Do it, said finally. But Director, I want you to understand something. If we use this weapon, we will save humanity, but we will also change it. We will become something different, something that the galaxy will fear forever. I understand, Madam President. No, his voice was heavy with sorrow. You do not. Neither do I. None of us can understand until we cross that line, but we will cross it if we must, because humanity will not die in the dark. The channel closed. Sat alone in her office, staring at the data streams that showed a galaxy preparing to destroy her species. She thought about her, playing in the parks of Luna City, laughing and running under the artificial sky. She thought about all the children of all the human worlds, innocent and unknowing. Then she began to give orders. Deep beneath the surface of Mercury, closest planet to the sun, ancient machines began to wake. They had slept for 100 years, waiting for a call that everyone had prayed would never come. The call had come. Prometheus was rising. The coalition fleet gathered at the edge of human space, a vast armada that stretched across millions of kilometers. 300,000 warships, each one crewed by beings who believed they were saving the galaxy from a terrible threat. At their center flew High Commander's flagship, the Eternal Conquest, a vessel so massive that smaller ships could dock inside its hull. Stood on his bridge and surveyed his forces with satisfaction. 17 species, united for the first time in galactic history. This was his legacy. This was his gift to the future. All ships report ready, his tactical officer announced. We can begin the advance on your command. Nodded slowly. In a few hours they would reach Earth. The human would burn, and with it, the threat that haunted his species' nightmares. The elders had warned against this. The elders were wrong. Begin the advance, he ordered. All ships attack formation. Today we end the human threat forever." The fleet moved forward, engines blazing, weapons charging. Before them lay Sol, humanity's home star. And at its heart, a small blue planet where billions of people looked up at the sky and waited for death to arrive. But humanity was not waiting passively. Admiral, now commanding the entire human defense force, stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Unbroken Spirit. Beside her, Sergeant Major, recently promoted to general, coordinated the orbital defense platforms. Below them, Director managed the largest evacuation in human history, trying to save as many civilians as possible. "They outnumber us 30 to 1, observed, his voice calm despite the impossible odds. "Maybe more." Nodded. She had known this day might come. Everyone had known. That was why Prometheus existed. That was why humanity had hidden its most terrible weapons, hoping never to use them. "Then we fight dirty," she said. "Deploy the protocol." Across the solar system, hidden installations that had waited for decades finally revealed themselves. Asteroids that seemed like ordinary rocks turned out to be hollowed weapons platforms. Satellites that had floated silent for years powered up devastating weapon systems. The human defense network was smaller than the Coalition fleet, but it was everywhere. The first Coalition ships entered the outer reaches of the solar system. Mines hidden in the darkness erupted in chains of destruction. Whole squadrons vanished before they could even fire a shot. The survivors pushed forward, absorbing losses, advancing toward Earth with grim determination. Watched the casualties mount and felt the first stirring of doubt. The humans had prepared better than he expected, but numbers were numbers. His fleet would reach Earth eventually. Nothing could stop that. "Press forward," he commanded. "Accept losses. Our objective is the planet, nothing else matters." The battle raged for hours. Human ships struck hard and fast, then retreated before superior numbers could overwhelm them. Defense platforms fired until their ammunition ran dry, then self-destructed rather than be captured. Every kilometer of space was paid for in blood. But it was not enough. The Coalition fleet, battered but unbowed, reached the orbit of Mars, then the asteroid belt, then Jupiter. Each barrier fell before their overwhelming numbers, watched Earth grow larger in his and allowed himself to feel triumph. "You see," he said to his officers, "the humans are mortal, they bleed, they break, they—" His words died in his throat. Sensors across the fleet began screaming alarms. Something was happening to the sun, something impossible. The star at the heart of the human system was changing, its surface rippling and twisting in patterns that known physics. "What is that?" demanded. "What are they doing?" On Earth, President stood alone in her office, watching the same readings. She had given the final authorization 1 hour ago. There was no going back now. "Forgive us," she whispered to the empty room. "Forgive us for what we are about to do." The Prometheus Initiative was humanity's last secret, hidden even from their own people. It was not a ship, not a bomb, not any weapon that the galaxy had ever imagined. It was something far worse. It was a device that could control stars. Built during the darkest days of human history, designed by scientists who had hoped it would never be used, Prometheus had the power to alter the output of any star within range. It could turn a gentle sun into a weapon of absolute destruction, channeling its energy into coherent beams that nothing could withstand. Now those beams lashed out across the solar system. Coalition ships vanished by the hundreds. Shields designed to withstand planetary bombardment failed in microseconds. Vessels that had survived 1,000 battles were reduced to expanding clouds of vapor. The beams swept back and forth like the wrath of an angry god, and everything they touched died. And through the chaos, a message broadcast on every frequency, in every language known to the galaxy. Admiral's voice was calm, almost sad. "Coalition fleet, this message is for you and for every species watching. The elders warned you. We warned you. We did not want this war. We offered peace. We offered mercy. You refused. You gathered your fleets and came to destroy our home, to murder our children, to wipe humanity from existence. So be it." The beams continued their terrible work. On the Coalition flagship, fires burned and sirens screamed, stared at the in horror as his armada was erased ship by ship. "We take no pleasure in this," continued. "Every death today is a tragedy that did not need to happen, but you gave us no choice. You threatened our home. You endangered our families. And humanity will sacrifice everything, even our own souls, to protect what we love." She paused. When she spoke again, her voice was harder, sharper, edged with warning. "Let this be remembered. Humanity does not seek conquest. We do not want empire. We wish only to live among the stars in peace. But if you force us to the edge of extinction, we will burn the galaxy itself to survive. This is your first and final lesson. Learn it well. And never ever forget, the storm sleeps lightly. Do not wake it again." When the light faded, the Coalition fleet was gone, not defeated, erased. 300,000 ships reduced to atoms, billions of soldiers who would never return home. In the Galactic Assembly, Luminance addressed the survivors. The great chamber was silent, every ambassador frozen in shock. They had just witnessed the destruction of the largest military force ever assembled, ended in less than an hour by a species they had considered primitive. "Now you understand," Luminance said. Its light was gentle now, almost pitying. "Humanity does not make war for territory or resources. They make war for survival, and when their survival is threatened, there is nothing in this galaxy that can stop them." Ambassador Vex, whose own species had lost 50,000 ships, sat slumped in his seat. His schemes had led to this. His fear had sparked a war that ended in catastrophe. "What do we do now?" he whispered. "You do what should have been done from the beginning." Luminance drifted closer. "You approach humanity with open hands and peaceful intentions. You trade with them. You learn from them. You treat them as equals and as neighbors. And above all, you remember this day. Remember what happens when you threaten their home." The elder's light pulsed once, filling the chamber with soft radiance. "The storm sleeps again. Do not wake it." 5 years passed. The galaxy slowly healed. Trade routes reopened. Diplomatic channels were established. The first joint research stations brought humans and aliens together to work on problems too big for any single species. Admiral, now retired, stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, the largest of these facilities. Beside her, a young scientist named worked on equations that might one day allow communication faster than light. "Do they still fear us?" asked, mandibles clicking softly. Considered the question. Outside the viewport, a human freighter docked alongside a cargo vessel. Their crews were already emerging, exchanging goods and stories and laughter. "Some do," she admitted. "Fear fades slowly, but every day more of them see what we truly are, not monsters, not conquerors, just people trying to survive and build something better." "And what are you truly?" Watched the stars for a long moment. Out there, billions of lives continued. Children were being born on 100 different worlds. Scientists were making discoveries. Artists were creating beauty. The galaxy was learning, slowly, that cooperation was better than conquest. "We are survivors," she said finally. "We have fought wars that nearly destroyed us. We have faced extinction and refused to accept it. We have learned that the only way to truly win is to make enemies into friends." She smiled, a small, tired, genuine smile. "We are human. We break, but we do not stay broken. We fall, but we rise again. And when our home is threatened, we become something that even we do not fully understand." She turned to face directly. "The elders were right to warn you. We are dangerous, but we do not want to be. Every weapon we build, every soldier we train, every plan we make, all of it is in hopes that we will never have to use it. We want peace. We want to explore the stars with friends, not fight through them with enemies." Her smile faded, replaced by something older and harder. But if peace is, if our children are threatened, if we are pushed to the very edge, she looked back at the stars. Then yes, we will burn everything to save them. That is what humanity is. That is what it will always be. In the distance, a human child ran past a group of alien visitors, laughing. One of the aliens, a young who had never known war, reached out to catch her as she stumbled. The child grinned up at her savior, gap-toothed and fearless. "Thank you," she said, and ran off to continue playing. The watched her go, something like wonder in its eyes. The storm slept, and in its dreams it smiled.